wives and children.
He's flying through ribbons to show that for so many years he held the Atlantic
Now
secret.
the tugs straining the hawsers, seeming to the landsman's eyes if they pull in all the wrong direction.
For centuries, rogue waves were considered little more than a legend, the kind of thing that sailors would tell each other about on cold nights for a fright. But as shipping technology improved and the 19th century rolled into the 20th, very real and very scary accounts of encounters with giant waves began to surface, and this is one of them. Lusitania and Mauretania are two of history's most famous ships, and it's well known that speed was an important facet to their success. Their hulls were designed accordingly, with sharp, fine lines intended for cutting through Atlantic waves instead of cresting over the top of them. Because of this, the sisters' reputation for unpredictable behaviour at sea was well deserved. They were known for suddenly dropping by the head, even in relatively calmer seas, which would startle passengers and send water all over the bow. In rougher weather, they were known to plough through waves and drop as much as 60 feet. Sometimes it felt as if the ship was actually playing a practical joke. One of Mauretania's captains was totally drenched after paying a quick visit to the bridge in his dress uniform before going down to dinner. Unfortunately, the exact choice of language that he used after this incident has been lost to history. All these factors came into play in 1910. In January, the eastern coast of the United States was enveloped in a total blizzard. Lusitania was steaming from Liverpool to New York under the command of Captain William Turner. A fierce westerly gale had blown up, and Lusitania was battling 50-knot winds and a 30-foot swell. At 6 p.m, Turner left the bridge under the command of Chief Officer McNeil. Turner had only just left the bridge when something terrifying was spotted ahead. A towering, 70-foot wall of water, a massive rogue wave. McNeil and the other officers on the bridge had no recourse but to brace and allow her to ride through it. But as the wave bore down on the ship, something terrifying happened. Lusitania's bow began to drop. Now, just to give some context here, let's get a sense of how big this wave might have actually been. This is me. This is my car. This is the Lusitania. And this is a 70-foot wave. That kind of illustrates it. McNeil knew what was about to happen, so he dived into the wheelhouse and slammed the door behind him. What happened next was described in detail by the New York Tribune. As he slammed the door, the comber struck. The bow went under and the flood, which was virtually two huge waves merged, came on with terrific force. It was a crash that sounded below like a house collapsing. The men in the wheelhouse said yesterday the roar on the bridge was beyond comparison. Mr. Harding, the quartermaster, who was at the wheel when the comber struck, was flung back, and the wheel, which had been lifted out of its bearings, was in his hand when the 5 feet of water in the chart room poured out on the deck. For a few moments there, Chief Officer McNeil was up to his neck in water. And Third Officer Story, who had just gone to the compass platform on the top of the bridge, found his feet swamped by white raging foam. The wave did some serious damage to the ship as well. The New York Tribune went on to say, 8 heavy plate windows were ripped from their teak and brass casings and hurled inward with the flood. Splinters from the sills fell against the back wall of the room and jabbed into the wood. The circular steel front of the chart room was bent and broken. It presented as much resistance against the flood as if it were made of wood. For the passengers, the experience was no less terrifying. One man later wrote that, "There was a fearful crash and the ship seemed to stop and shiver, and water poured through my ventilator and down a stairway into my cabin. I thought we must have run into an iceberg and rushed out to see what had happened and found the long corridor packed with screaming and hysterical women. We were soon informed that there was no danger, but a huge wave had struck the ship. In the morning, we discovered that the wave had knocked the captain's bridge right back and all the fixtures on the foredeck had been washed away." Lusitania and her complement had been extremely lucky because there were no serious injuries or deaths on board. McNeil rang down the engines to stop and move slowly astern, and for the steering gear to be checked. Turner rushed back onto the bridge, and after a half-hour's inspection and preparations, the liner was underway again. She finally pulled safely into New York Harbor, and her passengers and crew were shocked to find her bridge smashed in and 4 lifeboats dislodged. This terrifying encounter has gone down in history, but it's certainly not the only one of its kind. Queen Mary encountered a wave so violent it inspired the film The Poseidon Adventure. And in 1966, the Italian liner Michelangelo was hit by a wave that collapsed her forward superstructure, killing 3 and injuring 50. Ships are big, very big, but the ocean will always be mightier. As a quick epilogue, there's something really interesting I've been obsessed with for the past few weeks. Couldn't recommend it more. Go and check out big wave surfing videos filmed in Nazaré, Portugal. These people have absolute nerves of steel and regularly surf waves as big or even bigger than the one that hit Lusitania. Absolutely unbelievable. Thanks for watching. Lusitania and Mauretania were stunning ships with fascinating careers, and you have to admit that the Rogue Wave makes for an epic ship story.